Hello students, now we will start with new topic, that is third component of ecosystem, energy flow. For energy flow, the first source of energy for ecosystem is sun. Since the sun is giving the light and later photosynthesis happens, we can say the energy flow in ecosystem is unidirectional. And direction of energy flow is unidirectional. We know that from the sun, energy is transported in the form of heat. From sun, plants take the sunlight in the form of spectrum and they does photosynthesis. So, as the result of photosynthesis, again, energy is C. Now, here we are using the term as energy in the form of heat. Here also, finally, we are again using the term energy. What does it mean? Here, energy is in the form of heat. We can say it is a physical form of heat. Physical form of energy. But after photosynthesis, the same energy is in form of chemical. Means the physical form of energy by the plants or by the photosynthesis is getting converted into chemical energy. There is a term for this that I will tell you later, but out of total sunlight, how much light or spectrum is having the photosynthetic activity that we call as photosynthetic active radiation. Out of total sunlight, only 50% of light is photosynthetically active radiation. We used to represent this one with capital letters, that is PAR, PAR. Only this much of light is available for the plants. But out of that 50%, only 2 to 10% of photosynthetically active radiation is used for photosynthesis. Out of this 50%, only 2 to 10% of PAR is used by plants or available for plants for photosynthesis. We can relate this concept of conversion of physical form of energy into chemical form of energy with that of one of the physics law that we call as First Law of Thermodynamics. This conversion of physical form into chemical form of energy is related to First Law of Thermodynamics. What does this law is stating? It is stating that energy cannot be created, cannot be destroyed, but it can be changed from one form, that is, here we are talking about physical form, into chemical form. Physical form in the sense in the form of spectrum, here chemical form in the sense in the form of glucose. Because we know that after complete process of photosynthesis, we see the chemical form nothing but glucose as the product of photosynthesis. In later ecosystems, the same energy which is converted into chemical form is getting transported from one level, means one trophic level of the ecosystem, into other trophic level. So what are trophic levels? Trophic levels are considered as or are basically the functional places of organisms in ecosystem. So here later this energy is transported to next level of organisms. Here we can just take an example, that is from producers to consumers. So here this can be again explained with that of second law of thermodynamics during the transportation. But the first law is related to the conversion of physical form into chemical form of energy. In terrestrial ecosystems, we see the major producers as woody plants. In the same way, in case of terrestrial ecosystem, when we go for other trophic level, their herbivores are considered as the best producers. And at other trophic level, that is second trophic level, the producers are herbivores. Like the grazing animals, we can say the cows, sheep, etc. But in case of aquatic ecosystem, the chief producers are, chief in the sense main producers, phytoplanktons. And algae. And even in case of aquatic ecosystem, there are some aquatic herbivores that are nothing but molluscans. Next, all these organisms, they form into food chains. What is meant by food chain? Food chain is nothing but the transfer of energy or the arrangement of organisms which pass energy levels from one level to other level in an from one single organism to another single organism. That we will see in detail. So all these organisms forms into food chains and food webs due to interdependency. All these organisms in ecosystem form into food chains and food webs due to interdependency. What is meant by dependency? What is meant by interdependency? We know that herbivores depend on plants for the food material. Carnivores depend on herbivores for food material. Omnivores and top carnivores also depend on the carnivores, the smaller herbivores, etc., and for food material. So that condition is called as interdependency. So interdependency means plants depend on animals for CO2. Herbivores depend on plants for food. Carnivores depend on herbivores for food. So this total transportation or this type of condition is called as interdependency. So in case of ecosystem, we see food chains and food webs. If we see this one, how these organisms are depending on each other or how they are exhibiting interdependency. Just one example we can write in a diagrammatic representation as plants. Plants are eaten by herbivores. These are eaten by carnivores. These are eaten by top carnivores. So we can give one more term for here as these are primary producers. Herbivores are considered as primary consumers. Carnivores are considered as secondary consumers. Top carnivores are considered as tertiary consumers. We can see many examples here. If we see the interdependency of living organisms in an ecosystem like this, and the terms given for them are primary, secondary and tertiary. We can give other terms for this as producers are considered to be trophic level 1, that we represent as T base 1, means trophic level 1. Primary consumers are considered as trophic level 2. Secondary consumers are considered as trophic level 3. Tertiary consumers are considered as or are kept in trophic level 4. Coming to the examples of producers. In case of terrestrial ecosystem, the producers are different. In case of aquatic ecosystem, the producers are different. So here, in case of oceans, we see phytoplanktons. In case of terrestrial ecosystem, we see plants. Under herbivores, we can give some examples. In case of ocean or aquatic ecosystem, the herbivores are nothing but zooplanktons or molluscans and grasshoppers on terrestrial atmosphere, cats, cattle, sheep, etc. Cattle, sheep. Coming to carnivores or secondary consumers. Here examples we can take when a type of organism is eating insects or grains. Then it can be bird, wolf, fishes. Coming to top carnivores. Here examples we can take as man, lion, tiger. So these are considered as some of the representations to explain the trophic levels. When energy transfer is happening in these trophic levels, from trophic level 1 to other trophic level, then when we are considering only one organism, then we use a term like food chain. When energy flow is explained by considering organism level, then we use term food chain. This we can represent as there is one goat or there is one grass, some grass plants. They are eaten by one goat, but goat is again eaten by lion. We are considering only one type of organism here. This is considered as a typical representation for food chain. Typical representation. But if only such type of energy flow happens, by mistake, in any one summer season, if complete grass is dried off and grass plants are not present in one particular open area, then there will be no food for goats. If all herbivores or grass eating animals are dead, then lions cannot exist or survive. So this single type of organism level food chain is not existed in nature. So what organisms in the ecosystem does? They depend on more than one type of food material for their survival. if such organism level of energy flow only happens then if by mistake or because of the climatic changes, if any one organism dies, then total ecosystem is disturbed. Or crashed. So what happens in nature or generally ecosystem exists in the form of food web. It means that one organism is being prey for many types of other organisms, or one organism is depending on many different types of organisms as their food material. If we see some of the differences between food chain and food web. This food chain is considered as a single linear flow of energy. But a food web, it is made up of several interconnections or several interconnecting pathways. Food web is of or is made of several interconnecting pathways. Second one, it is considered as isolated food chain that decreases stability in the ecological community. It is an isolated food chain that decreases stability in ecological community, means among organisms. But food web is considered as more complex and it creates or it increases the stability in ecological community, is of more complex form and it increases the stability in ecological community. Next, here one individual occupies one trophic level in case of food chain, but there in case of food web many individuals, or we can also say one individual occupies many levels. Here there is less adaptation by the organisms. In case of food web there is more adaptations by the living organisms. One organism in case of food chain occupies only one trophic level. In case of food web, one organism occupies, all this I will show you in a diagrammatic form, many trophic levels or more than one trophic level. But there are similarities among these food chain organisms and food web organisms. So, similarities are the organisms that are existed in food chain and the organisms that are present in food web. They represent who eats who. These represents Next, it also shows that only 10% of energy that is present in one trophic level is getting transported to another trophic level. That condition is exhibited both in food chain and also in food web. The nature of 10% law is exhibited in both food chain and food web. So these are considered as the similarities, and these both are considered as the differences between food chain and also food web. Food chain, it is of two types. One is terrestrial food chain. Second one, aquatic food chain. Now, this we can learn with mentioning that of trophic levels and also types of producers. For suppose if we take primary producers, that is trophic level 1. Primary producers eaten by primary consumers. They are eaten by secondary consumers. They are eaten by tertiary consumers. There are another type of organisms that are mentioned under quaternary consumers. Under primary producers in terrestrial food chain, we can take examples like plants which live on the land. Under primary consumers, we can consider herbivores, one type of organisms, either sheep or cattle, etc. Under secondary consumers, we can take one type of carnivores. Under tertiary ecosystem, here we can mention like rats. Here we can mention like small insects. Small herbivores. Under tertiary consumers, we can take example like snakes. And under quaternary ecosystem, we can take eagle. That is under terrestrial food chain. Under aquatic food chain, starting from primary consumers, we can take one type of phytoplanktons. Under primary consumers, we can take zooplanktons. Under secondary consumers, we can consider small fishes. Under tertiary consumers and quaternary consumers, we can take same example, that is big fishes like whales, sharks, etc. So this is one type of representation of food chains. Then how the food web is going to look like. Next, in case of food web, we will take few organisms and we will write their names here. For suppose take fox, owl, snake, next rat, frog, squirrels, rabbits, next insects or grasshoppers, plants, and also phytoplanktons. We know that phytoplanktons and normal plants, that comes under one type of trophic level. Now we will see these phytoplanktons are eaten by insects. Next, even the young plant parts are also eaten by insects. Means primary producers are occupying the first trophic level along with primary consumers, that is Actually, here we have to write in case of terrestrial ecosystem, herbivores. We are also mentioning insects and grasshoppers. It means that the trophic level 1 is occupying trophic level, the producers are occupying trophic level 1 and also trophic level 2, means they are getting into these organisms' body. Now, coming to insects and grasshoppers. These are eaten by rats. At the same time, these are eaten by frogs. Now, coming to rats. Rats are eaten by foxes. Next, rats are eaten by snakes. Next one, even frogs are also eaten by snakes and frogs are also eaten by owls. Coming to the rabbits and squirrels. These plants are eaten by rabbits. Next, these rabbits are eaten by foxes. Squirrels are also eaten by foxes. So, these squirrels are also eaten by snakes. It means that one type of consumer is occupying many trophic levels based on the food habitats. Based on both the habitat and also the functions done by organisms in food chain. Again, these are divided into grazing food chain and terrestrial food chains. Based on habitat and function. Previously, we have seen only under habitat, but now we are also including the functions. Food chain is of two types. One is grazing food chain. This we represent with capital alphabets, that is GFC. Next, second one, terrestrial food chains. This we represent with capital T, capital F and capital C. This grazing food chain, it exhibits less energy flow and it starts with plants or the phytoplanktons, and mostly we can see this one in aquatic ecosystem. Seen in aquatic ecosystem. Terrestrial food chains seen in terrestrial ecosystem. Here there is very less energy flow. But here there is more energy flow. It starts with phytoplanktons and plants. Terrestrial food chain, it starts with saprophytes or decomposes. These both when combined forms into food web. Next is about trophic levels. So based on the source of nutrition, function of each and every organism in one particular area or geographical area, it varies. Then organism occupies a specific place in the ecosystem or in the food chain. Based on the source of nutrition, the function of organisms varies and they occupy specific levels in food chains or specific places in food chains. Now, we are giving a term for these specific places as trophic levels. these places are termed as trophic levels. Decomposers are not having any place in trophic levels. Because, for suppose if you take plants, if decomposers are present there, they will digest this one, then they will transfer energy. Coming to herbivores. Again, after the death of these herbivores, again decomposers has to digest all this one, convert organic matter into inorganic nutrients. So now decomposers are read here also. If you take carnivores, again the decomposers will decompose the dead organisms of the carnivores. Again, their energy level starts from there. So decomposers are occupying all types of trophic levels. So there is no specific place for the decomposers, especially the food chain. In trophic levels, %% law is followed by all organisms at all levels. For suppose, if you take trophic level 1, that is regarding the plants, they prepare food material. Consider that the energy levels or the energy is having 1000 units here. You'll write 1000 units of energy by trophic level, that is plants. From plants, only 100 units of energy is transported to herbivores. So they get 100 units of energy. When carnivores eat these herbivores, then only 10 units of energy is getting transported. Next, if you take another one, the top carnivores, only 1 unit of energy is getting transported up to the topmost carnivores. We are representing this one as T2, T3 and T4. So by the trophic level 4, only 1 unit of energy is attained from the primary producers. Means for every level, only 10% of energy is getting transported. This is called as 10% law. This 10% law is given by Lindemann. Now, what about the remaining 90% of energy at each and every trophic level? That is used for their metabolic activities. So 90% of energy at every trophic level is used or utilized for metabolic activities. So there are some other terms called as standing crop and standing state. What does it mean? At every trophic level, the total energy content. For suppose T1 is having 1000 units of energy. So now this total 1000 units of energy can be considered as a standing crop. But when the energy here, the organic matter is converted into inorganic minerals or nutrients, then it is called as standing state of that trophic level. We will see just two terms, standing crop and standing state. The total energy mass or total organic matter at particular trophic level is called as standing crop. Another word, standing state. The amount of inorganic minerals or nutrients in a particular trophic level of ecosystem is termed as standing state. These are about few different terms and their meanings, and about the third component, energy flow.